Untitled on the beat.
What's good, everyone? It's your boy Nati with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMVSportsZone. We got another one of these collab fantasy football videos with none other than Noah from Sport AI. And Noah, do you care to explain Sport AI and how great of a platform it is, as we do every single week?
Sure. I swear it won't be a shameless plug. As you mentioned before, we talked about it every single week, including my couple solo vids I've been doing on the channel. Sport AI is a mobile app integrated with artificial intelligence that helps you optimize your fantasy sports lineups and helps anyone understand sports analytics. I've known a couple of the DMVSportsZone subscribers have come over to Sport AI's fam and been checking out our newsletters for our breakout picks, our different analytics. So continue to check that out, and I'm very happy to continue to come on the channel and tell just a little bit about what we're about and what players are going to be killing it for every single week.
Yeah, for sure. Noah, like in 2 out of the last 3 weeks, he's been doing this thing solo, and he's been putting out great content on the channel, and always grateful for that. Always grateful for these collab videos, because once again, it's always great to have the sort of expertise of someone who works on the analytics side of fantasy sports and the projection side, and then someone who's just an ordinary fan like me who just loves to talk fantasy sports. So having said all that, let's get started with this preview video for week 9. It's crazy that we're already at week 9, but yeah, might as well get started. So first off, Noah, can you give me one fantasy sleeper that will likely break out in week 9? I know it's hard now, right? With 8 weeks, 9 weeks already done with the season, but can you give me one?
For sure. Like Nati mentioned, we're in a position now later in the season where all your per se huge sleeper picks like your James Robinson, we called, by the way.
Yeah, you did.
Your James Robinsons, your T. Higgins, all of them are gone. They're going to definitely be on someone's roster by now. They're owning over 90% of leagues now. So at this point, it's about who can you not necessarily pick up, but have on your roster and maybe even be on waivers that will really break out. And that player for us is Matthew Stafford of the Detroit Lions.
Okay.
So I know that a lot of people were expecting to go off against the Falcons, but he had a solid outing. Had 19 fantasy points in standard, half PPR, around the same amount of scoring. And Matthew Stafford also is a sleeper pick because he was dropped in a lot of leagues when Kenny Golladay went down. However, there are a couple of things going for him on the non-QB side of things that's going to help tremendously. The Detroit offensive line has improved tremendously. In the beginning of the season, they're ranked in the bottom half of the league, and now since week 5, have been in the top 15 in terms of pass protection, so sacks allowed, and rushing yards. Evidenced by having 2 running backs that are fantasy relevant, Adrian Peterson and DeAndre Swift. So that is a plus on the run game side. Also, you see Marvin Jones really step up into the number 1. He's actually a huge sleeper too. He's a huge sleeper as well. If Marvin Jones is on your waiver wire, I would definitely snag him up right now. Yeah. Very similar to the end of last season where Marvin Jones exploded in the absence of Kenny Golladay. Very similar situation here. And most importantly, that X factor, TJ Hawkinson, has finally lived up to the billing of being a potential future Pro Bowl tight end. Past couple of weeks, he has shown the catches, the targets, and more importantly, the red zone receptions, and being a big target in the end zone that they sorely missed with Golladay being out. Marvin Jones being more of a deep threat, but not really a red zone target. So there's a lot of factors going for the Lions right now. They're in also a very tight situation in their division. Surprisingly, they have a chance to actually win their division if they win out. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a lot of situation there. So they're not going to rest on the laurels, and the Lions are going to continue the push. Matthew Stafford has a great matchup this week, and for the rest of the season, he has a lot of weak pass defenses to attack. So Matthew Stafford, if you're in desperate need for a quarterback, especially if you only have one on your roster, he's a must roster right now, and he's going to be a breakout player for this week.
Oh, Matt Stafford's a great pick. I'm just sad because, as you know, I have Kenny Golladay in our league. I also have Kenny Golladay in my other league, and he's one of the very few reliable players that I've had in both leagues this year. And he's, I guess he's out this week is what I'm hearing from reports. So, but regardless, Matt Stafford did well last week with Marvin Jones and let's just say Marvin Jones is someone that I'm considering putting a claim in for, / already have put in a claim in for. But no, like I think Matt Stafford is a great pick there. For me, I'm going to go with someone who you've also mentioned on the channel in previous weeks, and someone who, while not being super efficient last week, still is the lead guy in a very opportune situation in JaMychal Hasty, the running back for the San Francisco 49ers. Speaking of putting claims in for, so I know Hasty, like I said, he hasn't been super efficient with his touches the last several weeks, and he had 12 touches last week, and even with the rushing touchdown, he also had a fumble, I believe. So hasn't been giving you like straight up great fantasy production, but he's the last man standing in the 49ers backfield right now. You got Raheem Mostert out, you got Tevin Coleman likely out, you have Jeff Wilson out, you have Tevin Coleman, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson. You have pretty much the entire backfield, right, for the 49ers that is out right now. And I think Hasty, again, being the lone running back standing, and despite the fact that Jerick McKinnon is still on the roster right now, he hasn't been getting too many touches the last several weeks, and I don't know what's going on there. Maybe the 49ers just don't want to play him. They are paying him big money, right, to actually have him on the field, but when you have him healthy for once, you're still not playing him. So again, I don't know what's going on there, but regardless, I think Hasty is a great sleeper pick this week. I think he is going to get running back 1 duties in that backfield once again. And on top of that, he's playing against a very awful rush defense in the Green Bay Packers. And I know the stats show that they're a terrible rush defense. I believe they're worst in terms of giving up the most fantasy points to running backs this season. And but I've actually watched a couple of Packers games. I don't know why, but I've watched a couple of Packers games the last several weeks, and the eyeball test just shows that they're even worse of a rush defense than the stats show, in my opinion. They're what Washington was for many of the DMVSportsZone subscribers who are watching this. They're what Washington was for many years before we actually start to stack up on the defensive line. But yeah, it's really bad there. Common denominator, Preston Smith. But having said that, I just think Hasty is a very good under-the-radar fantasy running back this week, and someone who fantasy owners should pick up off the waiver wire if they haven't already done so.
Yeah, definitely agree. It's very interesting. So Coach Shanahan mentioned that they want Hasty as the 3-down back. McKinnon actually did score a touchdown last game. However, he's been used as a third down back, a goal line situation, which can be kind of concerning, but Hasty did also get majority of carries in the red zone against a terrible Packers rush defense. Could be a big game. We've seen worse running backs get big games off the Packers. So JaMychal Hasty, I agree, is going to be a breakout pick.
Yeah, I agree once again. Moving on, Noah can give me 2 great fantasy plays this week, and try to go with guys who are not your Aaron Jones, or not Aaron Jones now, but Dalvin Cooks of the world and stuff. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. We always keep that in mind here at Sport AI. There are 2 players, another quarterback, if you guys are interested, and a wide receiver. Let's start off with the quarterback. That quarterback is Derek Carr of the Las Vegas Raiders. Rest in peace, Oakland. Derek Carr, very similar situation as Matthew Stafford, criminally underrated. Derek Carr, honestly, sounds like a very hot take. Beyond the fantasy perspective, is a very dark horse candidate for the MVP race if the Raiders finish in the playoff position. Right now, he has thrown only 3 interceptions the entire season, which is incredible considering the competition, with a very healthy 10-plus touchdowns and a run-first offense, which is another really incredible piece. However, what makes him such a breakout pick this week, or even sleeper pick, is he has a very ideal matchup this week, and with Darren Waller completely healthy, even Nelson Aguilar becoming that deep threat, Josh Jacobs also projected as a strong running back on our board. He has all the offensive tools and the weak matchup needed to break out. So Derek Carr is a very underrated player, and it's someone that you should look for your waiver wires. If Matthew Stafford's not available, Derek Carr is a great second option. Our other player is DJ Chark of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it's very interesting. You see all these questions about Gardner Minshew, not only his health, but him not playing to his ability, and that is very true. DJ Chark, very interestingly enough, actually becomes open on 68% of all his routes, which is nothing short of incredible, considering he is number 2, even sometimes number 1, with that core of Keelan Cole and Laviska Shenault. But with D.D. Westbrook going out for the season with a torn ACL, that's a receiver down. Chanel has been downtrending the past couple of weeks and can't even stay healthy at times. So it's only up to Chark and Keelan Cole. Chark gets a majority of the red zone touches, gets a majority of the slants, so he's going to back up that volume on the PPR side. And the red zone, of course, any fantasy league needs a player who can score touchdowns. So very good matchup this week against the Texans. Very bad defense in the form of the Texans, and considering that they tend to game plan towards the main player, which is James Robinson. Chark is going to be going one-on-one against a terrible Texans secondary. So DJ Chark is still on your waivers. I don't know if he will be.
Yeah.
Very unlikely. He's on a 70% plus of leagues, but expect him to have a big game.
Okay. I like your picks. I really do. I have. I mentioned, or I will mention someone else on that Jacksonville Jaguars offense towards the latter half of the video, but no, I think DJ Chark especially is in for a very big week against that weak Texans secondary. My great fantasy plays, so the first one, and I'm glad that I have him in one of my leagues, should have him too, unfortunately, but I don't. And Chase Edmonds, running back for the Cardinals. Chase Edmonds is a guy that, once again, I picked up in one of my leagues, and I'm happy about it for sure. With starting running back, who was super inefficient, and when he played for the most part, and Kenyon Drake being out for a couple games with ankle injury, I think Edmonds looks to be a solid running back one in the Arizona Cardinals backfield, at least for this week. And with Edmonds, unlike Drake, he has been super efficient, even with the limited touches that he's gotten over the last couple of weeks, and also as a backup running back, right? He was never a starter. He's gotten at least 92 total yards in 2 of his last 3 games. And I look for Edmonds to continue providing dynamic play in the run and pass game, but just in a more expanded role this week. And on top of Edmonds' great talent and opportunity this week, he's also playing against a Miami Dolphins defense that, while much improved, right, it's not a defense that you could consistently in fantasy look to as being one of the worst in the league. Like, it's actually much improved under Brian Flores. They're still giving up the 7th most fantasy points to running backs this season. So I'll look for Edmonds to be a great play this week for sure. And yeah, I'm glad, because we all saw that Edmonds, if you actually watch Cardinals games, he was the better back for most of the games this year, minus, I believe, the Cowboys game where Kenyon Drake just went off. But now he's getting the chance, right, to really show that he is a running back one in that Arizona Cardinals backfield. But
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you there. It's really interesting about the Dolphins defense from a fantasy perspective, because actually I would recommend picking up the Dolphins defense. Even if they don't necessarily win every game, they get a large amount of takeaways, which in fantasy they score highly. You saw against the Rams.
True. Yeah, they went off.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
I mean, don't expect that to happen every week, but I mean, if you see, actually, the Miami Dolphins defense is one of the top 5 highest scoring defenses in fantasy, which is very unusual to think about considering how bad the Dolphins have been in the past. But they are a team that's played extremely aggressively under Flores, forces sacks, forces fumbles, and to their detriment sometimes in real life, they will go all out in the blitz on not necessarily the best situation, but more than not, they'll get the sack, they'll get the interception, even if sometimes they do give up the big gain. So it is a tough matchup, but for running backs, it's a great matchup.
Yeah.
So receiver-wise, it's going to be tough. I'm not saying don't trust Kyler Murray and company, but
I think you'll still pick up some yardage on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. And then Edmonds, I think because of that, Edmonds is going to have even more rushing lanes open up because they have to be super concerned about Kyler Murray. We see that happen with other defenses that have been better or worse. So I think Edmonds is a very safe pick there.
Okay. And I'm going to go with someone else who I know we mentioned off camera and is definitely someone who's on the radar of everyone, but especially this week, and Stephon Diggs, wide receiver from the Bills that my guy Noah just picked up in a crazy trade in our league. But we always knew Stephon Diggs had the talent of a real-life top 10 receiver in this league. But the bugaboo about Diggs the last several years, fantasy-wise, has just been that he hasn't been super consistent. But in his new role in Buffalo this year, that's definitely changed things for sure. And he's really on track every single week for at least 12 to 16 half PPR points, but also has that occasional boom game for over 20 points, which I actually and more so projecting this week. He is the undisputed #1 target for Josh Allen in the passing game. So he gets most of the targets, right, in that passing game in Buffalo, even while a bit limited because of the fact that Josh Allen sometimes runs occasionally over the course of the game. And even though against a tough pass defense they played last week, and I know Stephon Gilmore did not play, and that definitely hurt the pass defense. But at the same time, that Pats secondary, even without Stephon Gilmore, is actually pretty solid still, and he was still able to rack up a lot of rack yards, run after catch yards, and remained a reliable threat for Allen throughout the game. So this week he's playing against the Seahawks secondary that has been absolutely atrocious this year, and it's giving up the most fantasy points to wide receivers in 2020. So I look for Diggs to have one of those boom fantasy days in week 9, much to my chagrin because of the fact that Noah has him now, and it's definitely someone I was looking into. But yeah, great pickup, Noah.
Yeah, thank you for sure. Diggs is a player that we have actually in our top 5 to finish the season. He will be in the top 2% of fantasy receivers projected from Sport AI. So he's got a great matchup. I'm happy to have him on my team. Another factor, a real world factor, is if you haven't been paying attention, John Brown has been one of the biggest disappointments in fantasy this season. Beyond injuries, when he's played, he's been next to invisible. Considering he was a 1,000-yard receiver last year, Diggs has completely taken his role. John Brown is not a receiver that runs a big route tree. So when Diggs takes those deep threats, mid throws, John Brown's invisible. Josh Allen, also another trend that favors into the Stephon Diggs, breakout performance probability is that if you notice, Zach Moss has slowly become the new #1 for Buffalo. And Zach Moss is a true runner, does not go out for many routes like Singletary. So that's even more touches and opportunities for Diggs in what is going to be a shootout in Seattle. Stephon Diggs, I agree with you. He's going to go off.
Yeah, I'm still pissed that I did not get him, but that's another story for another day. Moving on, Noah can give me, on the flip side, 2 disappointing fantasy duds this week.
We'll go to the running back side, Todd Gurley and Atlanta Falcons.
Okay.
So Todd Gurley has given a lot of fantasy owners a roller coaster of a ride. He's been relatively consistent, but consistently mediocre. A running back that people did pick up really early, 3rd round, 2nd round, 4th round, depending on the draft. He has gotten an increase in touches and, more importantly, on the goal line, but he has 2 major factors going against him. One, the Denver Broncos are extremely good rushing defense. You saw them get gashed by Jackson only because Jackson is a legitimate dual threat in the backfield. Todd Gurley does not get targeted much in the passing game, only on dump-offs. Also, has lost a lot of lateral quickness, which is how Jackson broke most of those tackles. Todd Gurley at this point is a 220-pound power back that only hope is to, charge forward. The Broncos with Bradley Chubb and a huge defensive line counters that well, and they've done it to many more talented backs this year in the league.
And that's really going back into not just last year, but that playoffs before last season. Like he's lost a step. I told a lot of my friends last year, because I had him in one of my leagues, I told them, like, he's just lost a step. I watched a lot of Rams games last year and now Falcons games this year, and he's just not the same anymore.
Yeah, I think those knee injuries, which is a big problem for explosive backs. I hope that doesn't happen to players like Derrick Henry. But unlike speed backs, power backs really need the explosiveness from their lower body. And Gurley's knee injuries have, I don't know what happened, but sapped all the energy out of him. He looks very unenthusiastic. He looks very similar to Gordon right now. Ironically, they're going to be facing each other this weekend. But Gurley is trending downward on our analytics side, and also on the real world, like I said, a lot of factors against him with the strong Broncos rushing defense. Also with the emergence of Brian Hill, sorry. I don't know why I questioned that. Taking a lot of the touches away from him. There was a very important indicator that is going to happen going forward when towards the end of the first half, Gurley completely disappeared and just left the field, and Brian Hill took 3 drives in a row from him. Apparently, there was a lot of rumors that it was a coaching decision to try and motivate Gurley, and Gurley responded, with an okay performance in the second half. So there are so many negatives going against Gurley. from our analytics side here at Sporty Eye, also in the real world, Gurley is going to be a huge bust this weekend. And the other player that we are slightly concerned about is Evan Ingram of the New York Giants.
So
Another player very similar to Gurley who was drafted really high. Often he was the go-to option if you couldn't get Waller, Kelsey, or Kittle, or Andrews. Even I've seen him taken above Zach Ertz. I mean, turned out that worked out pretty well, but didn't really work out. Evan Ingram is very inconsistent. Like I mentioned in weeks past, he is incredibly inconsistent when it comes to catching the ball. He's getting the targets from Daniel Jones, but a very, very bad sign is he is barely getting any touches in the red zone. Because of his catching issues, Daniel Jones or the coach, maybe both, have no longer faith in him, and he barely gets targeted in the red zone. He's facing this week and the next couple of weeks very tough passing defenses against tight ends. I know this past week he gave some users some fantasy sports players some hope with a decent performance, but again, if you noticed, a big performance with 0 touchdowns and 0 red zone targets. Evan Ingram not looking good, not a player I would start personally this week. Evan Ingram's a bust.
Yeah.
For this week.
Yeah. Not much to add there. I mean, those are two, once again, very great picks. Evan Ingram, always inconsistent. Can't really trust him. So yeah, nothing much to add there. For my 2 disappointing fantasy duds this week, I'm going to go with, first off, A.J. Brown, the wide receiver from the Titans. I know this is sort of going to rub a lot of people the wrong way because of the fact that he's been super consistent the last few weeks ever since he's returned, and has sort of been like that Stephon Diggs kind of player and just being a consistently good fantasy wide receiver. And he's also put up some wide receiver 1 numbers over the last few weeks, and definitely is a must-start wide receiver 1 any other week. But this week he's playing against a Chicago Bears defense that has given up just 1 passing touchdown per game and is giving up 3rd fewest fantasy points to wide receivers in 2020. So while I look for Brown to still remain in fantasy lineups this week, I don't think he's just going to disappear and get you like 3 points. I think fantasy owners should definitely temper their expectations for Brown this week for sure. And my other fantasy dud is actually from the same offense. It's his quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. And I was having trouble finding another dud for this week, to be honest, but I'm just going to go with the whole Tennessee Titans offense going up against, minus Derrick Henry, going up against the Chicago Bears defense. Ryan Tannehill was riding a hot streak of solid quarterback play for a couple games earlier in the season, but the last 2 games have just seen him complete less than 20 passes in each game. And this week, once again, he's playing against a Bears defense that has given up the 5th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. So I see Tannehill as being a fantasy dud this week. And once again, really the whole Titans offense minus Derrick Henry, who could be sort of relied upon as a legit threat every single week. But yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree there. It's going to be really interesting to see from the Titans' perspective how they respond, because they did score a decent amount of points against the Steelers, who are arguably the best defense. So when you see the Bears, logically you might think they have a similar performance, but the defense of the Steelers is much different from that of the Bears. The Steelers' defense is much more of a new age blitz package, hybrid 3-4-4-3 defense that likes to attack the quarterback and also cover the receivers with zone coverage, which is a big reason why you saw big games from Juju and Deontay Johnson, but how Henry was able to cut in pretty well. But for the Bears defense, it's totally different. You have a traditional elite defense. You have a big defensive line. You have big linebackers in Roquan Smith and Trevathan. You have elite corners, elite safeties. Matchup is much better against the Titans, who run a more traditional offense. So Henry is a huge question mark. Of course, you're going to start him. I mean, who wouldn't start him? Yeah. But this is the first time he's going to face a defense that has the linebackers that have the size to stop him at the mid-level. If that is gone, then they're going to have to go to A.J. Brown, and Tannehill's going to have to throw the ball. So it all comes down to who wins that battle. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see. I do agree that A.J. Brown will be a dud, as well as Tannehill. But it's one of those things where it can go either way, but I'm leaning towards the Bears as well. The Bears have proven this year they can survive other elite running backs, and it's not going to be different this week.
Yeah, agree there. Haven't watched a lot of Bears games. Definitely agree there. Sort of confirm what you have been saying, but yeah, I just don't think. I mean, I still think Derrick Henry will have a okay game. I just think in terms of the passing game for the Titans, I don't know. I just don't see it being a very productive one this week. But last but not least, as we end off every single weekly preview video, Noah, can you give me your fantasy MVP for week 9?
Yeah, for sure. I'm not gonna lie, going to say that we here at Sport AI say Darren Waller would be our MVP, but we've already mentioned him before, so I don't want to mention him again. Instead, we will be going elsewhere. We're going to be picking, interestingly enough, Justin Herbert of the LA Chargers.
Okay, I got him as my backup quarterback in both my leagues. Okay.
He's one of those players that has proven not only is he the quarterback of the future and not only could be rookie of the year, but he's proven that he can attack elite defenses.
Yep.
And thankfully for him, he's playing one of the worst defenses in the league in the Las Vegas Raiders. You have a completely healthy, outside of the running back core, completely healthy receiving core, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. You have the depth. You have the rise of Jackson, who is a great option in the backfield. You have a healthy offensive line. And you see every single week, Herbert is improving his decision-making. So from a real-world perspective, that's a great sign. But from a fantasy perspective and a data perspective, here's 40i, we have him outperforming his projected performance by over 8 points. And he's proven against even elite defenses, obviously, that he can rack up the 25 to 30 fantasy points. And in leagues where quarterbacks this late in the season matter, Justin Herbert will take you over the top versus even the toughest of opponents. Particularly, I know a lot of people are going to be facing a Russell Wilson or a Patrick Mahomes or even a bounce-back Lamar Jackson. So an MVP needs to be someone that can carry your team and bring you to victory. Justin Herbert, ideal matchup in real life, analytics matchup. Herbert is going to break out, fully healthy cast, this week's MVP.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's probably the highlight of my fantasy football season in both my leagues, just because it's been so bad. Predictions-wise on these videos have actually been pretty solid, but I don't know, just putting it all together has just not been good this year. But no, the highlight's probably just been picking up Justin Herbert, and I was close to dropping him just because I really wanted to add, I believe it was one of the wide receivers. I forgot the name of the wide receiver, but it was someone who I thought was going to produce. But no, I was like, you know what, Justin Herbert, this was going into the bye week, right? Justin Herbert has been solid. He, I believe, only had like a start or two at that point, but I just believe with the matchups coming up, he's a legit threat, and he's definitely a contender, if not the contender, leading contender for Offensive Rookie of the Year this year, because he's been balling out for sure.
Yeah, I think it's between him and Burrow at this point, so we will see.
I believe he's actually showed more than Burrow, if we're going to be honest. That might be a hot take, but...
No, I actually, maybe we're both in the hot seat here. I agree with you completely, because you see a couple of things. Burrow, I mean, this is going a little bit off the fantasy road track, but Burrow has a much better receiving core.
Yeah. Keenan
Allen at the top is the better receiver overall, but when you have Boyd, Higgins, and AJ Green, you have an elite receiving core. You have, for Herbert, Allen, who was injured for a lot of the season. Mike Williams was injured for a lot of the season. And your number 3 is a rotation. So it's weird because this week, I think finally you can say that the Chargers have a better receiving core than the Bengals, because you have everyone completely healthy. But before, Burrow had the better receiving core. So going forward, not only is Herbert going to, I think, be the fantasy MVP for us here at Sport AI for this week, but he will be in the QB1 discussion going forward with that healthy core. Another note to make, because I know a lot of people are probably confused why we didn't want to pick someone bigger. If you want to look at Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, both of them are going to be playing. The weather, of course, could change, but the weather prediction is it's going to be very windy in both those games. including, playing against Buffalo.
Yep.
And for Watson, they're playing Jacksonville, but it's going to be a pretty windy game. And we saw with other games this week, including the Raiders game, wind really plays a factor in whether they throw the ball or not. And you have a team in the Texans, as well as the Seahawks, that are not afraid to run the ball. So Herbert has the ideal conditions, not only because he's got a terrible defense against him, but the weather is sunny, it's going to be clear, there's not going to be any wind or rain. So a lot of times people forget about the weather factor, and people think it's crazy to think about it as a huge factor.
No, it's
but
a
if you
huge
saw
factor.
if you saw last week with the Raiders, they ran the ball almost 70% of the time, which is, in this day and age, a large amount. I know they're a run-first team, but they usually don't even run that much.
Yeah.
So Herbert has the weather in his favor now at this point. So we'll see, but that's another reason why he's going to be MVP over our other players. The game script and the weather does not play in the favor of a pass-happy attack for Wilson or Watson, but it does for Herbert.
Okay.
It could end up being a shootout because the Chargers' defense isn't that great either. They've been prone to either playing well or getting blown out, so it could quickly turn to a shootout, as we saw with the Broncos last week.
Okay. Yeah, man. It's tough because I have like good starting quarterbacks in both leagues, but yeah, it's Justin Herbert, man. He's very much giving you solid production every week at this point. But my fantasy MVP this week, as promised, I will mention someone else on that Jaguars offense, and James Robinson, the running back. Someone who Sport AI has been on top of since week one.
Yeah, we posted before the season started even.
Yeah, so again, I always give Sport AI the credit that they deserve, and especially on the James Robinson pick, just spot on. I also was going to go with Dalvin Cook, but I mean, that's sort of like the chalk pick, right? Like, I think he's just going to go off this week, and I think he will likely be that fantasy MVP, but at the same time, I want to go with someone who, one, wasn't like super mainstream as a top fantasy player, and also two, someone who I haven't picked previous week. So yeah, James Robinson it is. He's just coming off a bye week, so a lot of people in the fantasy community seem to have forgotten how great of a fantasy back Robinson is. I believe he had 29 half PPR points in the week before his bye, so shows you all that he could produce in terms of being a solid fantasy running back. And the Chargers rush defense wasn't atrocious, right? It wasn't like bad. So put up all those points against a okay defense, and I think he's capable of putting much more up this week. He's playing against the Titans, which I know Noah just mentioned in regards to that Jaguars-Titans matchup, and I think he might go off this week. I really believe that. Starting quarterback Gardner Minshew is out this week, so the Jaguars should rely much more on their ground game, and the Jags, again, are playing against that Texans defense that's given up the third most fantasy points to running backs this season. They just allowed running backs to run roughshod on them. I get it. I believe it was week 5. James Robinson did not have a great fantasy week against the Texans. I completely understand that. But usually in divisional matchups, one of the teams usually gets one of the matchups in terms of like how they produce and the great production that they produce, and then the other team gets the other. So I believe this week it's all about James Robinson and his opportunity to really show out and be that running back one that I know a lot of us believe he can be at this point. But I know Sport AI was on top of way earlier than a lot of people. But yeah, so I really see James Robinson contending with Dalvin Cook for that fantasy MVP title for week 9.
Yeah, no, we definitely agree. I know it's kind of crazy that we were at this point where we're saying that, that he is competing as a top 3 fantasy running back in the entire league. So believe that for sure at this point. I mean, if you're not a believer, then you're crazy because he's been going off week to week. Another thing interesting, you mentioned that divisional game against Texans earlier in the season. That was also a game where DJ Chark was not healthy. But now you have a fully healthy receiving core. You have that question at quarterback, obviously, with Minshew, being injured. We don't have a set path for him. But it doesn't really matter because if you look at the snaps, crazy enough, not a single running back has had a carry besides James Robinson for the Jaguars in the past 2 games. Not a single carry. I mean, he has gotten 100% of the carries. Chris Thompson hasn't had a carry in the past 3 games. He's only gotten catches.
Yeah.
Robinson is being so heavily leaned on by the Jaguars, for better or for worse. The record probably says for worse, but they're also not that great of a team. And he shows that he can handle the load. You see them stack the box, and they still get it done. That's why DJ Chark is getting open. That's why Chanot is getting open. That's why Keelan Cole's getting open. That's why D.D. Westbrook, before he got hurt, was getting open. Robinson is a game changer on offense. He allows his players around him to get better, and he is getting better every week as a rookie running back. I know we talk about Burrow and Herbert being offensive rookies of the year, but the fact that I think from undrafted free agent to possible rookie of the year, by bar none, unanimous best rookie running back.
Yeah.
Robinson is someone that's not only a feel-good story for fantasy, but in real life. I do agree. If you are facing a Cook, you are facing a Henry. Robinson could save your season, and I do agree. That's a great MVP pick there.
Yeah. Again, not much to add. James Robinson, he's the guy. He's the dude. So make sure to, I mean, you're going to start him regardless, but just keep in mind, rest assured that he will give you great production this week. Having said all that, that's probably it for this Week 9 Fantasy Football preview video. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe to this video, to the channel. And yeah, it's been another great one, Noah. Thank you so much once again for being on this video. Any closing remarks before I finish it off?
No, same as every week. Thanks for having us on the show. Like I mentioned in the video last week, and like Nati always mentions, we are not coming here for sponsorship or being paid. We are coming here because Nati has seen the power of Sport AI and has helped him win games. It's helped, obviously, me win games.
Yep.
And we want to continue to help our hundreds and thousands of people that have currently been reaching out to us to sign up for that beta. We want to sign up for our mobile app beta, which is free. Link is going to be in the description. And we are excited to see the results and another great week. Yeah, I'm excited. I think this is the most agreement I've had with you, all season. I think all the picks are dead on. Whoever has Robinson, whoever has Justin Herbert, be a very happy camper because they're going to go off. Matthew Stafford, Derek Carr, they're still on waivers, especially Derek Carr. So before you regret it, I would definitely try to pick them up.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's once again it for the video. I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but the next video that will be uploaded onto the DMVSportsZone channel will actually be our first official live stream on DMVSportsZone.
Halloween's over.
Yeah,
man.
yeah, Halloween's definitely over. I don't know about the fear factor, right? Because we do have the election tonight, but no, Halloween's definitely over. First official live stream, and we'll have it with Street Scores, with Alden Warpath, and with Pedro Smith. So some big time Washington football team YouTubers in this community, and if you don't know about them, look them up. They actually are pretty big time. So glad to have them on, and it's gonna be a fun live stream. It's gonna be tomorrow night. Well, I guess it'll be tonight if we upload this video on Wednesday, and it'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. Central time, and it should be just a fun live stream. So make sure to come out and support and join the stream, make some comments, and just join in the fun because it's gonna be our first big one, and I'm just happy we got to this point. Thank you guys so much for all the support of this channel, and hopefully it'll just continue to grow along with Sport AI, of course. So having said all that, thank you guys once again so much for watching, and it's gonna be a great fantasy week. Peace.